I must preface this with none of this is medical advice. And if you're seeking medical advice, you should seek it with your licensed qualified healthcare provider, not a video that you found online. But I encourage you to bring this video to your qualified healthcare provider. That way, in case they're ill-informed about the most recent research on this subject, they will too know how to improve their practice. All right, today we're going to be talking about depression, the newer causes of depression, and some of their mechanisms, how they work, and then we'll talk about what we can do to improve these situations. Okay? So to start, I want to talk about a history about the old type of depression revolving around serotonin. Now, enteramine was discovered originally in the 1900s as the first neurotransmitter that was discovered in our gut. At the time, we weren't sure that it even had an effect on the brain. It was a potent vasodilator, and it wasn't until later in the 1950s and 60s when we discovered LSD and psychedelics that we actually discovered serotonin. And it comes from enteramine. We could even see that it's a blood-derived one. It comes from sera, of the blood, tonin, the muscle structure, the tone. That's where we get serotonin. But predominantly most of the research is focused on the brain since the revolution of drugs and psychoactives. Now, this has been proven to be false, right? A lack of serotonin is not the cause of depression, or else you could just take some tryptophan and your depression would be gone, or any of those SSRIs should eliminate your depression and get rid of that, not cause anhedonia and other symptoms like that, right? Anhedonia, post-SSRI syndrome, those are all fascinating. If you have trouble with that, you should look into vasodilation issues because of its history of being enteramine, a vasodilator. But that's not today's topic. Today's topic is about depression. What we do now know is that there is a basis in inflammation. The baseline inflammation in people with depression is higher. They have higher levels of TNF alpha, interleukin-1 beta, and that reflects poorly in their ability to produce the correct amount of serotonin. So the correct amount of serotonin, 5-HT, and the correct amount of dopamine. So they're producing less. We get higher levels of Kynuric acid and Quinolinic acid. And these two regulate activity in the brain that's more similar to like having a seizure. You're not having a seizure, but it's like having a seizure because it regulates NMDA receptors. Now, NMDA receptors and methyl D-aspartate is important in brain plasticity, for your brain to be able to pick on new patterns, receive new information, and it works on glutamate. Now, what happens in seizures or with high levels of Kynuric acid and Quinolinic acid is that this becomes taxed too much. This receptor becomes taxed too much. And what you get in result is called excitotoxicity, which would result in something like brain fog, a symptom of brain fog. So your brain is all cloudy. It's the cloud going around your brain. You got clouds all around your brain. This IDO pathway is important to kickstart this. Instead of going into quinolinic acid, it's important to get this to go down because we want more proper amines, dopamine, enteramine. We want those. When this happens, you get brain fog, you get tired, you get demotivated, your thoughts become less clear. Your ability to understand complex scenarios and your ability to create new memories decreases. We're going to get more into the hippocampus in just a second about what's happening there as well. Next, I want to talk about the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenals, the HPA axis, and what happens there in a more specific function of what's going on. So when you have a stressor, your body releases cortisol, and you're able to either fight that, pick it up, fight and attack, like if something's attacking you, or you're able to flight, you're able to run away, or you freeze. And that happens because of an increasing cortisol. So originally you have an increasing cortisol that attaches to part of the brain in the hypothalamus here, glucocorticoid receptors. So we'll just write GR here, glucocorticoid receptors. And those will bring your body and your brain online to be able to fight that or be able to take in that stress response and use cortisol correctly. What happens from excess stress of our modern day lifestyle or toxins that you're exposed to or virus that you've been exposed to, that stress on the system of the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenals causes these glucocorticoid receptors to become desensitized. Similar to how your insulin receptors can be desensitized from excess glucose in your diet, which causes your pancreas to release insulin. So your insulin receptors in your body become desensitized, or how leptin receptors can be desensitized from overeating, and you don't get that satisfactory feeling, that satiation after eating. When this happens and your glucocorticoid receptors are down, they're desensitized, you don't get that response from cortisol. Cortisol feels no longer like a waking, promoting substance. So you can live in a state of fight or flight because your glucocorticoid receptors are not online. So your body has excess cortisol that it's producing during times of stress or just as your now new baseline. And instead of it attaching to the glucocorticoid receptor and telling your brain, hey, let's shut off producing more cortisol from the adrenals, it doesn't. This cascade leads to even more issues. But we're going to talk about why this even happens, why we get stuck there, right? Inflammation. Inflammation is the right word would be, it creates a baseline for your body to not be able to communicate more effectively. When we have high levels of inflammation, your body in response produces glucocorticoids to dampen that inflammation. That is its normal homeostatic response to try to keep your inflammation at bay. In fact, we have a circadian rhythm of how we are producing it. So on an axis of time versus cortisol levels, it looks like this. If this is midnight, and this is noon, and we'll just go back to 12 there. It looks like here, 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. What we get is a kind of like a curve like this. So your body produces a lot of cortisol right when you wake up at 6, or you should be waking up at 6. This is a healthy pattern. This is what a healthy person looks like. But if you're stuck in a state of fight or flight, your pattern may look like the opposite of this, where it's low in the morning and then gets high in the evening. And this is called a flipped circadian rhythm or a flipped cortisol response. So people who are like this, who have this going on, will notice that they've got brain fog in the morning, they're tired, they're demotivated. And then once the sun goes down, their energy just comes online. In the background process, they might be handling some kind of stress or some kind of trauma or some kind of inflammatory process, whether it's a disease or food or toxin, that needs to be addressed as well. From the brain fog and the flipped circadian rhythm, you probably are tired all the time. Or the things that would normally wake you up in the future, like coffee or exercise, they don't really like wake you up anymore. You feel anhedonic. It doesn't give you that response. You don't feel that dopaminergic pleasure feeling from all that. Or if you do, it's very slight. And what we want to do is we want to get these receptors back online. We want you to feel that cortisol. We want you to feel it in a healthy way. We don't want you to be overproducing it to compensate for the inability for the receptors to sense cortisol in the body. So, I guess I'm going to erase some of this, or I will write what we're going to do over here. All right, so the fixes to this going to look like this. First thing is vitamin D. Now, vitamin D is important. It acts as a buffer for cortisol when it is secreted from the adrenal glands. It acts as a buffer against how it desensitizes glucocorticoid receptors. So it makes that cortisol less likely to cause downregulation of those glucocorticoid receptors. So that's why having an adequate level of vitamin D in your body is necessary. Another great thing is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is able to increase the sensitivity of the glucocorticoid receptors. Let's say we're going to increase that sensitivity. Licorice has glycerin in it, and that's great. That also improves the recycling of cortisol. And improves the sensitivity of glucocorticoid receptors. Now, these are all great, but we want to tackle the baseline levels of inflammation here. What a lot of people like to do is take or go on an anti-inflammatory diet. Now, the anti-inflammatory diet is really good at reducing inflammation because a lot of the things that increase our baseline levels of inflammation are predominantly found in processed foods. There's a lot less chemicals and emulsifiers and solvents when you eat a whole foods diet. I'm not promoting a whole foods diet in this video. I'm just talking about why anti-inflammatory diets work well. Another thing from that could even be carnivore. If you've got an issue with IDO, because many of the IDO transporters for enteramine are located in the gut and liver. And that takes a lot of pressure off of plant toxins. So another thing that this does is it reduces toxins that are naturally found in your diet that we are just putting in our food. Pesticides. We know inflammation is so important in its role in depression that we've even found Advil, low-dose Advil, so baby aspirin, to be as effective or even more effective than most SSRIs. So we're going to put here COX-2 inhibitors. That's what aspirin works on, is COX-2, inhibiting that pathway. And some things that works on are like curcumin from turmeric, fish oil, and their respective SPMs, which are pro-resolving mediators. The last part about this is getting your hormones in order. And cortisol is a hormone. So is vitamin D. And by doing this, we're going to do things that we're going to work on increasing our saturated fat, because that is what the building blocks of cholesterol are. We also need to, it's going to go all the way down. I might even get lower. We also want to improve our hormones by practices such as yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong, some kind of meditative practice that is going to help you control your cortisol levels so you're not stuck in this. And lastly, but absolutely important, is in training the circadian rhythm. And that is getting bright light first thing in the morning, cutting out light in the evening, eating only during the day, and following all your Zeitgebers. The term is called Zeitgebers. Zeitgeber. And this is a German word, and this is what is called all your cues, all your biological cues for what time of day it is. So in the middle of the night, the sun wouldn't be up, right? That is a biological cue. The sun comes up in the morning. Or eating and hunting, that would happen during the day. Or drinking water, or socializing. You understand what I'm saying? Look up Zeke Gibbers on mybiohack.com, and you'll find out all the biological cues that we have to entrain our circadian rhythm. So today we talked about what depression might actually be, how the fallacy of serotonin is not proven to be true, inflammation and your baseline levels day to day contribute to the improper production of amines and your response to cortisol because of a decrease of glucocorticoid receptors in the hypothalamus. And lastly, we talked about some fixes such as vitamin D, ashwagandha, glycerin and licorice, anti-inflammatories such as the carnivore diet, reducing toxins, COX-2 inhibitors, and then more other lifestyle things like increasing your saturated fat to get the right amount of cholesterol, doing a meditative practice, especially with the body like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, and then in training your circadian rhythm. And if I were to list this in order of importance, it might even be in this direction, starting down here and going up. These seem like the easiest things to buy because you could just supplement that. Same with these. These require dedication. You must be dedicated. To get out of something, you have to pursue getting out of it, or else you'll be stuck there. Have you ever felt that you've heard something and it's just like flying over your head? And it's something that you know you should be able to pick up on, something that you should be able to remember pretty easily. It's not above your vocabulary level or beyond your pay grade. It's something that you heard and just goes out your ear. Well, in depression, you have what is called your hippocampus. The hippocampus in the whole basal ganglia here, it shrinks. Your hippocampus is necessary for memory retention, forming memories essentially. You are able to hear something, remember it, your brain forms a long-term process of it and sticks it somewhere deep in your memory. And that's what the hippocampus is responsible for. you have glucocorticoid receptors on your hippocampus as well. And so the desensitization of those receptors there also causes you to not be able to remember what you just heard. It's like you've got pre-Alzheimer's. That contributes significantly to the brain fog, I'm sure, because it's very frustrating hearing something, you know where you heard it, but you didn't remember it. I hope this video was valuable to you, and this model of depression hopefully gave you some insights into what's going on maybe in your life or with someone that you know. If you found this video helpful for them, please share it with them. You know, I wish I knew about this when I was suffering from a lot of inflammation and had depressive symptoms. If you want to see more videos like this, I recommend that you subscribe to our channel. I produce videos like this all the time. I love breaking down mechanisms. I appreciate that you took the time to even watch this video, and I thank you for your time. Thank you guys for watching, and stay beautiful.